Okay, it's 5:30. Wonderful. Welcome, 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 guys. This is the music of Final Fantasy, exploring the compositions of Nobuo Uematsu. Yes. Lovely, lovely. Well, guys, my name is Dan Lopatka. I'm from Chicago. I'm a professional bassist in Chicago. And not only do I do professional bass, but I also do composing for video games. Right now, I work for a company called Pickle Feet Games. It's a great name. They're out of Seattle. And before them, I was working for Vigilant Addiction Studios. And with them, we put together this game called Adventurer Manager. It's a bit of a tongue twister, right? Adventurer Manager. It was a Steam Greenlight game. Maybe somebody has come across it? Nope. That's, hey. Good guys, good people. All right. So I worked at Adventurer Manager, and I was the composer for that. Now, as you guys could probably already tell, this was an 8-bit title, right? I mean, you could, look at the logo, right? And to me, when I started working on it, it was very reminiscent to Final Fantasy. We had these big monsters like this, and it was essentially a dungeon crawler where we would take parties of 4 adventurers, a mage, a knight, and so on and so forth, go through these dungeons, collect loot, kill monsters, right? It looks kind of like Final Fantasy, right? A little bit, not as good at graphics, but a little bit like Final Fantasy. So for me, that was what I wanted it to sound like. Because it reminded me of that, I wanted to have that nostalgic kind of thing going on. So, in doing that, I had to ask myself a couple of big questions. 2 big questions. Number 1, what compositional devices does Uematsu use to create setting? So, when I say setting, I like to think of it as from macro to micro. Macro setting being like the general mood of the game or the overworld of the game. And that mood sets go down a little bit to, going down to micro, so specific locations and how those locations are going to sound being in that overworld. And then beyond that, interactions. Battles. How do battles and how do characters relate to one another in that general overworld, right? Does that make sense? We're clear? Good? So that was the first question. And to me, the answer to that was melody, harmony, and rhythm. How does Nobuo Uematsu use melody, harmony, and rhythm to create setting? Second big question. Why doesn't the music get boring? And I think this is something we all have to look at, especially as composers, and looking back at that older music. Because those tunes are like a minute long, right? They're like a minute long, like tops maybe a minute and a half. And so we hear them over and over and over. So why don't they get bored? You guys know as well as I do, if you get stuck in a certain dungeon or area for like a day, you're going to hear those tunes over and over and over. And, part of the composer's job is so that you don't kill yourself, right? So we have to think about that. So for me, that relates to arrangement and form. How do we arrange the music? And obviously, I'm sure some of you are thinking it, there's probably some overlap there, right? Because, having a catchy melody definitely helps it not become boring. But for purposes of this discussion, we're going to divide those 2 up. Fair enough? All right, cool. Okay, so starting with question number 1, talking about melody, harmony, and rhythm. Melody and harmony specifically. Diatonic melodies and harmony. Now, can anybody here, there's so many, I was not expecting all of you guys. I was thinking like the first couple rows, I was gonna get up and talk to all of you. Now I gotta be up here. This is what you've made me do. Okay, So, can anybody tell me what diatonic means? Does anybody have a good definition of diatonic? Or even a not so good definition? Anybody know what that means? Yes, sir, in the back.
All the notes of the melody, the chords, remain within the scale or scale collection.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That is a wonderful definition. So that's essentially what I said. Using only notes found in the prevailing musical scale. So no altered notes. So, for example, if we were in the key of C major, the notes of the C major are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And we would only see those notes in the melody and in the harmony. So if we have the harmony of the chords are harmony. So that's, if I'm using the word harmony, I generally mean chords, for those of you who aren't as hip to music theory and all that. So we have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. And so, yes, sir.
Sorry about this, everybody.
The man's coming down.
So, sit back for a second.
Yeah.
Too many people standing on the walls is a violation of fire code. If you have anything in a seat next to you, please remove it. And if you are standing, please fill as many seats as possible that are open. Thank you. Just drop it there.
That's less of a fire code. There's some room up front. We have a lot of really great people up here. They would love for you to sit next to them. Huh? Yeah? Yes? No? Okay. All right, I guess we'll continue. So, all right, so diatonic, tunes that are diatonic are going to have a melody that only is within those 7 notes, and the chords that are made from those 7 notes, that's all we're going to see. So when I think about diatonic melodies and harmony, I think about familiarity. Familiarity being that in our world, in our actual world, our world, if you listen to, if we turned on the radio right now, basically everything we would hear would be diatonic. We wouldn't hear anything that's non-diatonic, or a word that we're going to learn in just a bit, chromatic. Has anybody heard that word, chromatic? Hands? Okay, a couple. This is great. This is great. Okay, a few people. This is great. So, I think of diatonic stuff as familiar. It's of our world. So, what we're going to listen to from Final Fantasy VI, woo, yeah, is, yeah, Terra's theme. All right. And luckily for us, we have. That's my fiance. She's great. Oh, and I seriously, everything I do, I always embarrass her at least once. So this is just par for the course, guys. Just par for the course. All right, so before we even listen to this, let's just look. Those chords that we have here. Now, by the way, for those of you who know this recording, I wrote it a half step higher, just so we could make the point of it being in C major and not in G sharp. Okay? Cool? Cool? Fair? All right. So, all right, cool. So, so if we look at just the chords, that's, for those of you who don't know, the A minor, E minor, A minor, E minor, the stuff that's above the staff, those are all the chords we just discussed, right? We don't see anything that deviates from what we just talked about. And with the melody, we don't see anything that's like, we don't see anything that's an altered tone. Everything, we don't see any sharps or flats or natural sides or anything next to any of the notes that would alter the note. Yeah? Clear? Cool? Clear as mud? Yeah? Oh no, that's not good. I had a teacher who used to say that all the time. Clear as mud? Okay, anyway. So okay. So let's listen to Tara's theme. And I apologize if this is too soft for a moment. Okay, so that's Tara's theme. Completely diatonic. There no what we call chromatic, which we're going to get to in just a moment. So everything's completely diatonic, no altered notes. So let's move on to chromatic melodies and harmony. So does anybody know what chromatic means? I kind of given it away, but maybe somebody has a different definition. Yes, you, sir. Yeah.
Chromatic means using any of the 12 common notes in the 12-tone scale.
Yeah, that'd work for me. That'd work for me. Anybody else? Anybody else have another definition, or is that pretty much we all in agreement? Yeah. Okay. Fine. I'll buy that. So chromatic is usually notes that do not belong to the diatonic scale in which the piece was written. So if we go back to our example being in C major, like the last one, if the piece was in C major, but there were what we call accidentals, sharps or flats, so if we had like a D flat or an F sharp or something like that, that would be chromatic. And like how diatonic was familiar of our world, this is sounds more foreign to us. Because we don't really hear, I mean, obviously if we're listening to video game music, we do hear a lot of chromatic stuff. But like just in our general world, in our general oral world, we're not going to hear very much chromatic music. Like you're not going to hear much chromaticism on a Taylor Swift recording. Like I hate to tell you, it's not going to happen. So our example for this one is going to be our good friend, the Moogle theme for Final Fantasy V. So before we jump into listening to it, what I really want you to pay attention to is a couple things. So first of all, just looking at it. In the second bar, where we have the D flat 7, flat 5, we have 3 flat notes right in a row. We have an E flat, a D flat, and a C flat. So already we know, just without even hearing it, this is going to sound much different than diatonic music, because there are flats and sharps involved. So we jump down to, in the fourth bar, we see the same thing, basically the same idea as the second bar. If you looked at in the B section, there's some more of that going on. We see a couple accidentals in the first bar of the B section, of the second bars of the B section. What I want you to pay attention to, though, is when we get to that fourth bar of the B section, the one that has A flat on top moving to a B major chord. That's going to really take us out of the realm of like sounding normal, out of the realm of familiar. So what I think is cool about this, if we listen to the first measure of the A section, it's going to sound all pretty in. But as soon as we hit that D flat 7, flat 5 chord, and we hit those chromatic notes descending, it just sounds out. It sounds so strange, which is perfect for Moogles, right? That's perfect. So let's listen to that and see how this works for us. Okay, here's that second bar. Whoa! Moving to the B section. All sounds pretty in. Now checks out. Cool. So is everybody hearing that? How chromaticism kind of takes us out of that familiar realm? Yeah? That making sense? Seeing the difference between those two? Then my job is done. I'll get out of here. All right, cool. So, moving away from diatonic and chromatic, we're going to go into modality. Ooh. Does anybody know does anybody know what a mode is? Oh, there's a couple hands. All right. We heard from you. How about next to you? You, sir. Yes.
So a mode is it's a scale. So you have a key, and you start on a note that's not the center of that key.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you have a scale, and you're starting on a note that's not the what we call the tonic of that key. So for example, if we're in C major, C is the note that all the other notes push towards. C is the tonic. C is home base, right? So what happens in modes is when we change the tonic to a different note in the scale. So an example of this would be if we had the C major scale, so the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, but instead of having C be our tonic, we would have like D be the tonic. And if D was the tonic, we'd be in what's called Dorian. Or if E was the tonic, it would be Phrygian, or F Lydian, or G Mixolydian, or A Aeolian, and so on and so forth. That doesn't matter as much. You just have to know that this is a thing. So it's often analyzed. People will often not look at it that way. I like that way of looking at it. I think that's the clearer way to look at it. But a lot of people will look at it as in relation to a major or a minor key. So for example, Dorian would be a minor scale, but with a raised sixth. And a lot of guitarists do this. Are there any guitarists here? Couple? Have you guys have heard of this way to look at it? Instead, just like raising or flattening something? Yeah, so same thing. So if we were in Dorian, it would be like a minor scale with a raised sixth, or Lydian, a major scale with a raised fourth. And that's all good. So now a good example that I like to look at is the Chocobo theme. I'm hitting all of them. I'm getting all the faves. This is great. I'm playing only the hits. All right, so okay, so looking at the Chocobo theme, we're going to be looking at the Final Fantasy III version. That's like the first time we hear it in its entirety, with two sections. And so what I want you to pay attention to is if you remember from the first example, when we were in C major, we had no sharps, no flats in the key signature. And here again, we have no sharps and no flats. So we have the same key as C major, but G is our tonic note. G is our home bass. And you can see that we start on a G chord and all of that, and we see a lot of G. G is our home bass here. So what's interesting is the A section is in G Mixolydian. G Mixolydian, the fifth mode of, the fifth mode in general, fifth mode of C major. And so what I want you to pay attention to is, especially in this last bar, I wish I could point to this, but this last bar of the A section, the melody goes up to an F on the top line. You guys, how many of you read music? A couple? Some? A fair amount? Okay. So those of you who can't read music, that's okay. But be listening for that last note of the A section, because it's going to sound, you probably have heard this song a number of times, so it might not sound as like out to you, but I assure you, it sounds it's going to be a little bit out. So the cool thing then is when we hit the B section, where we start seeing F sharps and stuff like, we start seeing sharp notes. So we have an F sharp in many of those places. So that would be, what would that be? Starts with a C? Chromatic, all right. But it just always depends on how you want to analyze it, because we're kind of changing key right here to G major. Well, we're definitely changing key to G major. So we have an F sharp going throughout, and anytime we see an F during the B section, minus the chord on the last line, we're going to see it sharp. So we're essentially in G major for the second half. So let's listen to this. And at the A section, I want you to pay attention especially to that last note and hear how that sounds a little bit out. And then transitioning into the B section where it's going to sound more like familiar. Okay? Here we go. Oop. Let's try it one more time. Here we go. A. Here comes that note. Ooh. The B. All straightforward. So if you guys notice, when we hit that F chord, like right before the ending, that kind of came out of nowhere. That sounded like more foreign than what we just had, right? Did everybody hear that? Yeah, a little bit. Kind of a change of emotion. You didn't hear it, sir?
No, I don't understand anything you're talking about.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. This is like, yeah. Well, just you being here means a lot. Thank you, sir. I hope you absorbed something. Cool. So, that was a short example. Let's just hear that one more time. So, even if you don't know, like, the notes of the chords and all that stuff, you can still hear it emotionally. You can still focus on, like, how it makes you feel. If it sounds like you're being tugged in a different, like, more unfamiliar direction. So let's hear that just one more time. So here. So that F. Da. It's kind of like a raised eyebrow moment. It's all straightforward. Da, 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 da. Right there. Right there. Okay, I see some nods. This is good. This is good. So we'll move on. Did that help at all, sir? A little bit? I'm sorry to hear that. So, moving on. If you didn't like that one, you're really not going to like this one. So, modal interchange. Anybody? Does anybody know? It's okay if you don't. Sir, you do? What is it?
It's when a song or a piece changes mode in the middle of,
That's okay. That's fair. That's fair. No, that's fair. I know what you're saying. I know what you mean. So the way I like to think of it, or another name for it, maybe you guys have heard this name, borrowed chords. Oh, okay. Yeah, so modal interchange. That's such a college. That's an academic name. Okay, borrowed chords is a little bit more straightforward. So, borrowed chords is using harmony that originates from the parallel major or minor scale of the one in which the piece is written. So even that's a little bit more convoluted anyway. So how would we bring it down a little bit more? So if the piece is in C major, but we're using chords that are in C minor. That make a little more sense? Yeah? Okay. That's I think a little more straightforward. So the chords may also come from parallel modes, just like we were talking about earlier with modes. You could say, okay, well, I'm in C major, but I'm going to use this chord that's from C Dorian, and that could be cool. Or I'm going to use this chord from C Phrygian, or whatever. And it could be just a completely different sound. So what we're going to listen to here the Final Fantasy VII main theme. Now, does anybody know, just looking at it, first thing I want you to notice is that the melody, if we just look at the notes of the melody, there's no chromaticism, no chromatic notes, right? They're all diatonic. We don't see any like altering of those notes in the melody, okay? Can anybody tell me what chords are gonna be the bar? Bless you. And now she feels really bad because everybody just. I'm so sorry. Okay. So can anybody tell you what chords in here do not belong to E major? You, sir.
This is kind of a guess just based on remembering what it sounds like.
Sure.
But the second bar is
The C sharp minor in
Yeah.
the seventh bar. C sharp minor is actually in the key of E major. That's going to sound pretty straightforward. You, sir.
it's the C and the D7.
Yeah, exactly. So we have in the fourth bar, we have a C major and a D7. And we also have a D major chord in the second to the last bar at the third line. So everybody see those? Okay, so those are the moments that I really want you to pay attention to because, again, even if you don't know like fully what we're talking about, they're gonna pop out to you. The cool thing I think about here is that if we look at the melody in the third and fourth bar, the first line, and we also look at it in the second line, it's the same melody. So we get to hear two different ways of how that could be harmonized, of how we could have the chords relate to that melody. And where originally we have a C and a D, which is really going to pop out, we then have an A, which isn't going to pop out as much. That's going to sound pretty plain Jane. So let's listen to that and see if we can catch those things. Okay, hold on. There's a big intro on this. We got to skip that. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Okay, here we go. All straightforward. Okay. You guys feel that? So did you guys feel that? It's that's the thing. Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh boy. See, in small doses, I have a lot of fun, but you know, she hears this all the time. It's not nearly as fun. Anyway. Okay. So that's the thing. It's an emotional thing that happens right there. And what I think is so cool is that he first harmonizes it with this modal interchange or borrowed chords that sound kind of out. They change your whole emotional reaction to the music. And then when he does it again, he just keeps it very straightforward. So to me, that's amazing. That's so cool, guys. And the other thing, the chords C major and D7 come from E minor. So we're in E major, and those two chords come from E minor. Make sense? All good? Clear? Cool. All right. So when it comes to major and minor, like looking at setting, I like to think of it as beyond major and minor when we talk about Final Fantasy music, beyond major and minor, because it's the familiar versus the beyond. So we talked about diatonic being familiar, right? So our world is familiar, mostly diatonic melodies and harmonies, versus the world of Final Fantasy, which is mostly chromatic and modal melodies, just like we've looked at. Now the cool thing about what Uematsu does here is that he uses this relationship to tell us how we should connect with the characters, locations, and so on. And so I want to take us back to Terra's theme. Now remember I said that Terra's theme was a completely diatonic melody. It was completely diatonic, the melody was completely diatonic, the chords are completely diatonic, the whole tune. Okay, that is the only completely diatonic song in Final Fantasy VI. Guys, that is the only completely diatonic song. Out of 60 plus songs, pieces, whatever you want to call it, I know that there's a definition, but out of 60, one is completely diatonic. And think about that. Think about what that means. So, do you guys know who Terra is? Does anybody know who Terra is? Okay. Oh, yeah, I know. Have you all met my fiance, Terra? Okay, so, but guys, think about that. So she's the main character who we are supposed to most relate with, who we are supposed to be most familiar with. And she is the only one with a completely diatonic melody and harmony. And we are supposed to be familiar. Guys, I posted this on Facebook as soon as I heard it, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. They know. They're friends with me on Facebook. They saw it. But I mean, the cool thing about it is that not only that, but it's militaristic. There's this like military kind of drum beat in it. The melody sounds very like kind of old Western. It's heroic, but because it kind of goes between major and minor, there's sort of this unsure feeling about it. Guys, that is a portrait of Terra. That is a musical portrait of Tara. That's incredible.
Holy shit!
Guys, seriously, I was freaking out. You have no idea. Okay, so moving on to rhythm. Guys, nerding out about music theory is like the funnest thing ever. And to do it in front of like an audience is like obnoxious. Okay, so rhythm. One of the big rhythmic things that Uematsu uses is syncopation. Who can tell you what syncopation is? Anybody? It's okay if you can't.
It's when the
Oh, okay, no, sure, yes, please.
rhythm moves like on and off the beat.
Okay, yeah, where the rhythm moves on and off the beat. So, a simple way to think about it, syncopation is accenting what are typically weak beats. Accenting what are typically weak beats. So, if we could see, that's too funny. You can hear my stop. Okay, great, wonderful. Okay, so if we're in like 4/4 time, we're in common time that like every pop and rock song ever is in. Not every one. I know there are exceptions. Okay, all right. So if we were in 4/4, like if this was our beat, the strong beats are 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get your okay. Anyway, so one. Okay, so they're 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the strong beats. And when we accent what are typically the weak beats, we have syncopation. So for example, if we're clapping 2, 3, 4, those are all strong beats. But if we're here and we're clapping out the weak beats, amp, right? So check this out. What's cool about that is they have two different kind of like motions. If we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, all strong beats, it has kind of a downward motion to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Versus, is there a little feedback?
Yeah.
Oh dear. That's why people don't stop. Is there an off switch on here? Yep. Oh, all right. Cool. My man. Yes. Okay. Nobody. Just you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the cool thing about playing the upbeats or syncopation is it has a completely different like motion to it. So if we're 1, 2, 3, 4, but we're doing it has this kind of upward bouncing motion to it. So when we add syncopation, we now have this like bounce instead of having just 1, 2, 3, 4, just hitting all the strong beats. So the thing I like to think about is the disco groove, right? So if we think about a disco groove, we have the bass drum, we can see at the bottom, and it's on all 4 beats. The snare drum is on beats 2 and 4, and then the hi-hat is on all the ands. So if we had just had like boom, crack, boom, crack, boom, crack, like that's cool. That has this like pushing forward kind of motion, but then we have boom, tss, tss, boom, tss, boom, tss, boom, tss. Those upbeats, that syncopation is what pushes the music forward, right? Guys, can we agree? Cool? Woo! Syncopation! Woo! Okay. All right, so probably the most well-known moment of syncopation is the battle rhythm. Some people kind of know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, some people know what's up. So what we have here is a syncopated ostinato. Ooh, sexy. All right, so ostinato. Does anybody know what an ostinato is? Anybody know this term? It's really straightforward, but not necessarily people know that name. Ostinato. Yes.
Is that like playing a chord one note at a time?
That'd be an arpeggio. Anybody else? Ostinato? Yes, sir.
It's a feature of the music that repeats over and over.
Yeah, exactly. A feature of the music that repeats over and over again. So if we have like a repeated bass line that happens throughout a piece, that could be an ostinato. Or if we have a repeated rhythm, like we're going to talk about, that repeats throughout the piece, that's an ostinato. So the one that we see is a syncopated ostinato. And just looking at it can be a little bit confusing, especially for those of you who don't read music. It just, or if you've read a little bit of music, this might look like, oh man, what the hell? He's asking us to do. Okay, but the way I like to think of it is that if we're counting eighth notes, it's basically 4 groupings of 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 groupings of 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So that would sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, and now it's, yeah. Now you know what's up, right? Okay. So the cool thing about this, what we're going to listen to some Final Fantasy X. Holla! Okay. So we're going to listen to some Final Fantasy X. And the cool thing is that it being in 4 is, as I said before, all like basically every pop music you hear, piece of pop music you hear is going to be in 4. So it keeps, the 4 keeps it familiar and comfortable. There's this rocking drum groove, right? But the syncopation keeps it driving forward and also makes it off kilter enough that it throws off our sense of balance. Okay? So let's give this a little bit of a listen. I think it starts about here. And what's cool about here is you're going to what's cool about this is you're going to hear, yeah, I know, can't talk. What's cool about this is you're going to hear the melody play this over and over and over. And when it's not playing it, you're going to hear the drums take over and play this rhythm also. So it's kind of like this call and response thing going back and forth. So let's check this out. Here it comes. Right here, the drums are just playing straight forward. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to just let it keep playing, right? That's a great tune. Okay, but we have things to do. All right. So the cool thing about this is that it's used throughout every Final Fantasy game. If you guys haven't played 10, I'm sure you've probably heard that rhythm at one point or another. Yeah? Cool. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So we'll come back to that in a bit. So our next big question, that basically closes out our first question: what we could do to make the music sound like Final Fantasy. But now, regarding melody, harmony, or rhythm. But here with form and arrangement, this is why the music doesn't get boring. So our first thing is form. And with all the pieces we heard, if you remember, we kind of looked at, there was an A section and a B section for basically everything we listened to. And so these are contrasting sections. They're 2 different sections. And because if we have at least two different sections, it adds variety to the music and makes it just more interesting to listen to. If we just heard the same section over and over and over, it'd be kind of boring. Like, for example, if you guys listen back to, I think the first instance of the Chocobo theme is in number 2. Yeah? I think so? Yeah. All right. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Zelda. In that one, there wasn't a B section. It's just the A section over and over and over and over. So there's no variety. It's just the same thing over and over and over. So it can get a little bit boring, but having that second section just makes it more interesting. So then arrangement is another big thing. And changing texture, more specifically, changing texture. How do we change texture? Well, he uses a lot of different techniques. The 3 I want to look at, though, are distributing the melody between different instruments. So not just having like a violin play the melody the whole time. Because just like hearing the same section over and over, that could get a little bit boring. Adding harmony. So earlier I said harmony is chords, but what I'm referring to here is having instead of like, you hear a choir and two people are singing together and they're singing in harmony. Yes? We know about this? Cool. So that's what I'm referring to. Adding harmony to the melody. And then also changing the accompaniment. So like sometimes there'll be drums playing, sometimes you take away the drums so that there's no percussion playing underneath it. And other techniques. So what we're going to look at here is we're going to jump back to the Mughal tune, but this is going to be Mog's theme for Final Fantasy VI. And what I want you to take note of is I highlighted what instrument is playing each measure. And you'll see that he constantly is adding variety. He's going, for the A section, he's going back and forth between oboe and tuba. And then the B section, he's doing trumpet, oboe, trumpet again, and then a trumpet duo. He's adding harmony at the very end. So, excuse me, let's take a listen to that. Ooh, that's not it. Let's take a listen to that and really be listening for this, the changing of texture. Here we go. So hip. That's good writing, guys. That's just great. Okay. So, jumping into our last section here. So what I want to look at is a listening guide. I wrote out a listening guide for you guys for a specific tune that, who's all played Final Fantasy 15? Okay, yeah, fair amount of people. All right, wonderful, wonderful. I have too. It's pretty good, right? Okay, so what I think is really cool, about the music of Final Fantasy is that it's become like an integral part of the series. It has to sound a certain way. So even though Uematsu didn't write Final Fantasy 15, we could still hear his influence in all of the more current games. I think he stopped writing about Ted. He did Ted, like a little bit of Ted, but I think after Ted, I think he was basically out, right?
Well, he did some of 11 and 14.
Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. He did some, but he did do like the entire game. He didn't do the entire game. So we're going to listen to Stand Your Ground. And I wrote this somewhat lengthy listening guide. So I'll let you guys take a quick look at it. But I tried to highlight some of the things that I think are important, such as we're going to hear the battle rhythm a lot. We're going to hear some chromatic harmony and that kind of stuff. The second one, the chromatic harmony with the A flat and the bass. So this is a G minor, for those of you who are hip to that stuff. This is a G minor, and it moves up to an A flat in the bass, which is not in the key of G minor, so it's chromatic. It's a very cool, like, emotional thing that happens right there. The melody is diatonic. There's a lot of texture changes. And there's a borrowed chord later, and there's a lot of cool stuff. So try to follow along. I think I'm gonna play it twice, just so everybody can hear it. If you don't catch something, try to hear it on the second time. So let's give this a listen and see if we could get this. Okay. Find out how loud this is. Here comes the A section. B section. Okay, now comes the variation of the melody. Right here. That's a C major chord. We're gonna hear it again. Hold up. Really different emotion right there. Cool. Now, does anybody want to hear that again? Yeah? Okay. All right. So, I mean, because I've heard it so many times, and like as I'm writing this out, it's like I don't know if they're gonna get everything the first time. I don't know. So let's hear it one more time. A flat. This is the A section, all diatonic melody. Now we to the B section. The brass is going to double. We have our ostinato variation of the A section. B section variation. Okay, here comes that cool moment right here. Same thing again. Now it's more activity. Cool. Did that help? That make sense? Okay. Wonderful. I saw nods. Nods are good. Okay. Cool. So to close this out, writing exercises. So if you want, you can take this home. Okay. So if you want to write something that sounds like Nobuo Uematsu, or just use these in your own writing, step one, melody. So getting the sound of modal and chromatic stuff is supremely helpful. And that could be listening to video game music, or it could be listening to stuff that's not remotely video game music, some 20th century classical stuff or things like that. There's stuff that's very chromatic or modal. Just to get that sound in your ear. From there, writing a melody using only the notes of a specific mode. Pick a mode like Dorian or Mixolydian or whatever, and just try to write a melody that only uses those notes. Lastly, try to take a diatonic melody and then alter the notes, alter a couple of the notes and make it chromatic, or add some sort of chromatic walk-ups to notes, things like that. Just try to add chromaticism into something that you're already doing. With harmony, either take a melody you've already written or this new melody that you write, and try to harmonize it with at least one chord from a parallel mode. So using modal interchange or borrowed chords. And lastly, with rhythm, creating a syncopated ostinato using groupings of 3 and 2 in 4/4 time. So remember, for the battle rhythm, it was 4 groupings of 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 groupings of 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now that equals 16, right? So that's over 2 measures, and so there would be 8 eighth notes in each measure. So equaling up to 16 is going to let us stay in 4. And you could change time signatures if you wanted to, but just to keep it simple, stay in 4. Well, you could do something like 2, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, or something like that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or something like that. The possibilities are not quite endless, but there's a lot of good possibilities. And if you do this, guys, I would love it if you sent me it, because I would really love to hear anything you guys do. So, or if there's anything you're working on currently, I would love to hear it. So, if you hit me up on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that, I'm at Music on the D-Lo. Music on the D-Lo. My last name is Lopatka. My first name is Dad. D-Lo. Okay. All right. Yeah, I know. It's clever, right? So Music on the D-Lo. Now, if you guys have any questions, I know we're still about 7 minutes before the end. So if there's anybody who has like a question, I'd be happy to answer it as well as I can. Yeah, sir, way in the back.
Do you have an example of what you wrote for your game?
I might. I'm not promising anything. I might. So, in the meantime, are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any way we can access the recording of the presentation?
Oh well, yeah. So there will be. I'm gonna post. So if you guys are on YouTube, anybody on YouTube? Okay. So if you look me up, if you look up either my name or Music on the D-Lo on YouTube, you can follow me. I have bass lessons out there and stuff like that. This will go up there. So I'll put it up there. I think Mages is also, Mages I think is filming it. So this will be, I don't know where they will have access to it, but somewhere they will. But if you follow me, you'll find out. So follow me on Instagram or Twitter and all that stuff, and I'll definitely let you know. Yes, sir.
How did you get to the point where you could just listen to this music and understand all of that?
Oh God. Okay. A lot of it's a lot of listening and a lot of singing. Singing what you play and playing what you sing. That helps immensely. So a lot of people, especially guitarists, or really any instrumentalist will learn like the modes on their instrument, and they'll know how to play them, and that's great. But if you don't understand how that actually sounds, you just know the shape of it under your fingers, that's not going to do much for you. So it's a matter of then taking that and singing what you play and playing what you sing. Because if you can do that, then you can start hearing that elsewhere. If you could sing it, you've internalized it. Does that make sense? It's like if you understand a word, like some vocabulary word, you should be able to give an explanation of it, and you'll know it when you hear it. And if you don't know it too well, then it's like I can write it down. Google can tell me what it means, right? So, does that answer it? Is that cool? Cool, man. You, sir.
Did you hear the Final Fantasy prelude theme in 12 to 18 seconds in the Final Fantasy 15? Piece?
With the scales.
In the beginning of the battle.
My fiance is nodding her head. She's like, yes.
The strings are.
They're playing it?
Yeah. Yeah, you
Oh,
can
they
do
are?
it.
Okay. No, yeah, you okay. Yeah, I'll buy that. Sure. Cool. Okay. You, sir.
What advice do you have about creating melodies in the first place?
Oh, boy. That's listening to, influences do a lot for you. Influences do a lot, and listening does a lot. Listen to a lot of good melodies, play those melodies, sing those melodies, start to figure out, like, even just shapes of melodies. Usually there's some sort of focal point. There's some high note that everything leads up to, sometimes over the course of a phrase, sometimes over the course of an entire piece. And just understanding like what makes a good melody. Like I think the best melody ever written is Beethoven's Joyful. I love that melody so much. That's an incredible melody. But yeah, I mean, listening. That's a huge amount of it. Yes.
On the flip side, how do you avoid stumbling upon an already existing melody?
I wouldn't worry about it because I wouldn't because basically everything's out there, but we all only have 12 notes, and we're bound to stumble onto a lot of the same ideas, but it's how you use those ideas. I mean, I hear in pop music, I hear the same melodies a lot. And I'm not just talking about chord progressions at all. I'm talking about like the same melody, but the rhythm was changed slightly. I have a whole list of them in my phone, actually. I wouldn't worry about it. You're going to be original because you're you. We all use the same words, right? But we don't sound like each other. You know what I mean? So because I sound different than you guys because we're different people and we've had different influences. So, yes, sir.
So you talk mostly about arrangement and tonality in this panel. Once the synths on like the NES or on the SNES started sounding more like actual instruments, do you find that Uematsu ever floated towards specific instruments? Or did he mostly go across the orchestral and rock?
I think it sounds to me like he went across the board, and I think that he partially did that because he had access to that then. I think that if I was if I was in that situation, all of a sudden it gets to this new system, and I have access to all these different sounds. Boy, howdy, I'm going to use them all. At least try. You had a question, right? Or unless it was already answered.
No, not really. Kind of getting a little less technical, but of all the Final Fantasies that Uematsu did, is there one that you take inspiration from, or you just completely love?
Full disclosure, I was only going to talk about 6 for a while, and then Ari looked at me and she's like, "You can't do that." and so I changed it to be a little bit of everything. Now I think we're at the end. Yes.